It's lovely to see you back here in Rio. You come back as the defending champion. Does that in some ways feel a little bit different coming back as defending champion?
No, just because I feel like, well, I know it's been a long time since anyone defended, so it's like, okay, I hope I'm that person, but if not, whatever. But also I think it's just when you're playing this tournament, you know, your expectations, for me at least personally, are not so high just because you're playing the top 8 in the world.
Well, that's really interesting. So they're different in terms of because of that caliber of player?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I've played my first couple WTA finals and I didn't do so well, so I just know that it's going to be tough, and I don't expect it to be any easier.
Coco Gauff just spilled the tea in her latest sit-down with Sky Sports. And honestly, she held absolutely nothing back. From calling out the brutal reality of the WTA schedule to admitting she was basically forcing herself to play last year, this interview hit different. She got real about her tequila and gummy bear obsession, the guilt she used to feel about having fun, and why she doesn't regret that whole coaching drama one bit. What's your take on players skipping tournaments to protect their health? Drop your thoughts in the comments.
And it's a very different event though, because it's not just about the tennis. As you've probably navigated the world doing interviews before you've come to us. And there's a lot of other things, and we had the photo shoot as well, so a lot more goes into it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a lot more time commitment than most tournaments that we're typically playing, but definitely I think now in year 4, I was mentally prepared on what to expect.
Let's get into this, because Coco wasn't just doing the usual PR-friendly athlete speak. She came prepared to actually say something, which is refreshing in a world where most interviews sound like they were written by a robot programmed to avoid controversy.
We talk a lot about mentality and how tough you are. There was a lot of talk ahead of the US Open. People said, very brave. There's been changes in the team. It's playing out with everyone watching. How do you feel things have changed since the US Open? I'm not necessarily talking about the serve. I'm just talking about you in general in your game.
Yeah, I think, well, obviously a lot less. Well, I don't know. It feels like a lot less eyes now. I think US Open is like the prime of prime time. So yeah, it was a very tough, because I'm used to attention, but I don't know if it was more, but it felt like a lot more.
Did it feel more?
Yeah, it felt like a lot more in that moment. So once it was all over, I think it was honestly a great learning experience for me. I definitely don't regret my decision or anything. I would do it again 1,000 times. But I think for me, it just made me a better player and a better person on and off the court. Just having to learn how to navigate all of that. And being on tour, there's sometimes you think you got the hang of it, but there's always new territory to be faced. And I think that was a new thing. And I'm sure it's not going to be the first time or last time in my career where there's maybe some attention, maybe not necessarily with me on the game, but maybe something can happen in my personal life. I don't know.
First up, she addressed the elephant in the room about her schedule changes this year. Last year, Coco played the entire Asian swing and ended up winning Wuhan, which sounds great on paper. But here's the kicker. She admitted she felt absolutely exhausted the whole time. She literally said she couldn't push herself, wasn't hungry for it at all, and was forcing herself to compete. That's not exactly the triumphant champion story everyone expected to hear, but it's honest. She won Wuhan last year but felt like she couldn't even play. That's wild when you think about it. Here's someone winning tournaments while running on empty, which says a lot about how insane the tennis calendar really is.
Now, I need to talk to you about Asia, because you enjoy playing in Asia. You won Wuhan this year, but no player on the WTA Tour in the last 3 years has won more matches than you in Asia. What is it about that part of the world? What is it about that swing or time of the year for you?
Yeah, I think for me the main thing is just it's post Grand Slam season, so I feel like the stress is just all the way at the lowest at the floor. And I would love to have that mindset everywhere, but not always. You can, fake it till you make it, but there I don't have to fake anything, so it's just real in there. I think that's the main thing, and obviously the fan support, they give you a lot of gifts, you feel really welcomed, so I think it's one of those events that you just, feel really relaxed in, and, the fans, well, not too relaxed where you're just going through the motions because the fans keep you engaged.
So this year, she and her team made a conscious decision to be more thoughtful about tournament selection. They skipped Beijing entirely, which probably had some people questioning the choice, but Coco explained it was about not rushing things. The main focus was always Riyadh and the WTA finals, and everything else was just preparation for that. She's treating tournaments like chess moves now, instead of just showing up to everything and hoping her body holds together. That's actually pretty smart, even if it means fewer matches and potentially less prize money in the short term.
The gift game is strong. I mean, every time I see a clip, there's another gift coming your way.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
yeah.
But that's really nice because it shows how much they care about you guys, and it shows how much they care about the sports.
Yeah, definitely. I think they definitely have the best fans in the world, and it's nice to have people appreciate, your sport and you, but especially being a woman and female sports, and I don't know, a part of the world that I feel like feels so far from me being American. So it's cool to see that global support.
When she talked about learning from defeats this year, she didn't try to sugarcoat anything. There were finals she wanted to win, chances she felt like she had, but she just didn't play her best when it mattered. Her opponents showed up and played incredible tennis, and that was that. But instead of dwelling on it like some players might, she framed those losses as necessary lessons that made her come back stronger and smarter for the US Open. That's the kind of mental approach that separates good players from great ones. Most people would be making excuses or talking about bad luck, but Coco's over here treating her losses like they were part of the curriculum.
And it doesn't feel like there's a lot of time if you want to work on something in your game because of the schedule. There's not a lot of time for you to do it away from the match court.
Yeah. I think tennis is like one of those rare sports too that we don't really have closed practices. Like we're always practicing, and I think that was a tough thing, just having to work on emotion, and all the cameras when I would walk on court would turn to me. Everybody was trying to see everything, so it was a cool experience. I mean, it was not in the moment, but now looking back, it was funny, and I can laugh at it.
Well, I imagine it's about learning from that. So a year on everything you've been through, you just keep learning and growing from everything you go. You seem to be able to turn it into a positive.
Yeah, definitely. I try to. Maybe not always in the moment, but later on, I can look back and try to find everything. I mean, there's always positives in almost every situation in life.
The whole conversation about taking time off was actually fascinating because she got into the why behind it. It wasn't just about being tired. It was about trusting your body and doing what's best for your health first. She pointed out something that should be obvious but apparently isn't. The WTA scheduling is incredibly tight and tough, which is why more and more players are getting injured. That's not her being dramatic either. That's just facts. When you're expected to be in peak physical condition for 11 months straight with barely any breaks, something's going to give eventually. Either your body breaks down or your mental health takes a hit, and neither of those outcomes is good for anyone. Coco made it clear that putting health at first place was the smartest move she and her team ever made. And honestly, it makes sense. People pay money to watch players bring their best tennis and put on a show, not to watch someone suffer and struggle on court because they're running on fumes. But the system kind of pushes players toward that suffering, because if you skip tournaments, you lose ranking points, you lose prize money, and you risk losing sponsor commitments. So even though everyone knows the schedule is brutal, there's massive pressure to just suck it up and play through it anyway. Now let's talk about the tequila and gummy bear situation, because this might be the most Coco Gauff thing ever. After her Miami and Madrid wins, she mentioned celebrating with tequila, and apparently that became her whole personality for a while. She said that everywhere she goes now, people bring her tequila and gummy bears. One place apologized because they didn't have gummy bears, but they had tequila, which she found hilarious. The fact that random establishments are now stocking these items specifically for her is both funny and slightly concerning. She's not even drinking right now because she's still in season, but she's building up quite the stash for the off-season. The whole thing is ridiculous in the best way possible.
What's interesting is how she connected this to switching off and having fun. Early in her career, Coco struggled with guilt about not being focused on tennis all the time. She felt like she always had to be thinking about the game, always training, always in that competitive mindset. But she realized that once you reach a certain level, the pressure becomes insane and you have to balance it. Allowing herself to have fun and enjoy her off-court life was a game changer. She became more consistent on court once she found that balance, which makes total sense. Nobody can operate at maximum intensity forever without burning out. Your brain needs downtime, your body needs rest, and sometimes you need to just be a regular person doing regular things instead of being Coco Gauff, the tennis champion, every single second. The coaching clinic she did with Judy Murray and local kids gave her perspective too. Being around children who are focused on their tasks, but also clearly having fun,
reminded her of what gets lost when you're competing at the highest level all the time. You forget about the fun part of tennis because you're so locked into the competition and the rankings and the expectations. Those kids aren't worried about any of that. They're just hitting balls and enjoying themselves. That's what the sport was like before it became a job. And sometimes you need that reminder. Coco also touched on the WTA finals specifically and why her expectations are different for this tournament. She's defending champion, which sounds like it would add pressure, but she actually doesn't feel that way. Her expectations aren't as high because she's playing the top 8 players in the world. That's really interesting when you think about it. Most athletes would be talking about how they're coming in confident because they won last year, but Coco's approach is more realistic. She knows it's been a long time since anyone defended the title, and she's not putting that pressure on herself. If she does it, great. If not, whatever. That's a healthy mentality that probably helps her perform better because she's not carrying around the weight of those expectations. The Asia swing success is another thing worth breaking down. No player on the WTA Tour has won more matches than Coco in Asia over the last 3 years. She credits this to the post-Grand Slam season timing, because the stress is at its lowest. She doesn't have to fake being relaxed, she just is relaxed. That mental state makes a huge difference in performance, but it's not something you can just manufacture everywhere. The fan support in Asia is also a massive factor. They give tons of gifts, you feel welcomed, and there's this energy that keeps you engaged without making you feel overwhelmed. It's the perfect balance of support and relaxation, and Coco thrives in that environment. She made a point about Asian fans having the best fans in the world, and specifically mentioned how nice it is to have people appreciate women's sports in a part of the world that feels so far from her American home. That global support hits different, especially as a woman in sports where you're constantly fighting for equal recognition and equal pay. Seeing fans in Asia go all out for women's tennis players sends a message that the sport matters, that these athletes matter, and that women's achievements are worth celebrating just as much as men's. Now, about that US Open situation and the coaching changes. Coco addressed it head-on and said she doesn't regret her decision at all. She'd do it again 1,000 times. That's bold, especially considering how much scrutiny she faced. The attention felt like a lot more during that time, and having to work on her game with cameras constantly on her and everyone analyzing every little detail was tough. But she framed it as a great learning experience that made her a better player and person. That's mature as hell for someone who's only 20 years old. Most people at that age would be defensive or bitter about criticism, but Coco's using it as fuel for growth. She also acknowledged that tennis is rare in that practices aren't closed. Everyone can see what you're working on, which makes it harder to implement changes without the whole world watching and commenting. During the US Open period, every camera would turn to her when she walked on court for practice because everyone wanted to see what was different with her serve or her game. In the moment, it wasn't fun, but looking back, she can laugh at it now. That ability to find humor in difficult situations is probably why she's been able to handle the pressure as well as she has. The schedule discussion came up again when talking about how there's not much time to work on your game away from match courts. Tennis doesn't really give you that luxury.
You can't just take a month off mid-season to rebuild your serve or work on a specific aspect of your game because you'll fall behind in rankings and miss mandatory tournaments. So players are basically expected to fix problems on the fly while still competing at the highest level, which is like trying to rebuild an engine while the car is still driving down the highway. It's possible, but it's really freaking hard and not ideal. Coco played 76 matches this year with 61 wins, which is absolutely wild. She had the most matches on the WTA Tour, and she did it without any injuries. She gave credit to her physio and conditioning coach for keeping her healthy, which is smart because that level of play volume would destroy most bodies. The planning and management from her team is clearly on point. When asked how she stays motivated with that many matches, she said she just doesn't like losing. Every time she loses and feels unmotivated, she goes home and gets back to work. That's competitor DNA right there. Some people need external motivation or pep talks, but Coco's motivation is internal and driven by that hatred of losing. The energy question after 11 months on tour is trickier. She admitted that there are parts of the season some people like and some don't, and if you get to a place you don't like, it becomes difficult to spend your free time there and get energy from it. But most places on tour, she already knows and likes, so it feels a bit like home. That familiarity helps maintain energy levels, because you're not constantly adjusting to new environments and new stressors. You know where to eat, you know where to practice, you know what to expect. That consistency is valuable when your life is basically lived out of a suitcase for most of the year. Her Wimbledon win was obviously huge, and people said it changed the conversation about her ceiling as a player. But Coco doesn't really look at it from that broad perspective. She focuses on one season maximum, usually splitting the season into parts. Winning Wimbledon was surreal and a dream come true, but she's not sure yet how it'll change her future seasons. She doesn't feel experienced enough to answer that, which is honest. But she knows that with good work, intensity, good mindset, and belief, she can do anything. The hard part is bringing all of those elements together for 20 tournaments a year. She did it at Wimbledon, though, so she knows it's possible. And that's the standard she's trying to remember and reach for. Coming back to Riyadh as defending champion, she's not putting extra pressure on herself, despite knowing it's been a long time since anyone defended the WTA Finals title. Her expectations for this tournament are specifically different because she's playing the top 8 in the world. She played her first couple WTA Finals and didn't do well, so she knows it's tough and isn't expecting it to be easier just because she won last year. That's realistic and probably helps her perform without the weight of defending champion pressure crushing her. The event itself requires way more time commitment than typical tournaments. There are interviews, photo shoots, coaching clinics, and all sorts of obligations. She's in year 4 of the WTA Finals now, so she's mentally prepared for what to expect. The photo shoots are fun, even though she's sweaty in her nice dress. But she likes getting dressed up sometimes and putting on full makeup. It's a moment where you realize you worked hard to be there, and all the players should be proud of themselves. That appreciation for the moment is important because it's easy to just go through the motions and forget why you're doing this in the first place. Coco's latest interview proved exactly why she's not just another tennis player. She's real, she's smart, and she's not afraid to call out the problems in the sport while still showing up and dominating. If you're not already following her journey, you're missing out on one of the most genuine athletes in sports right now. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because we're bringing you all the realness from the tennis world.